Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're looking at the next part of Star Wars with Warhammer 40K. There's going to be episode 23, The Cost of Honor. Last time around, the locals are getting, I think the term is restless, because they got giant Mando weaponry. At least I'm assuming it's giant based on the name of a Ripper gun, which there's probably someone out there in the comments actually that I think about who would know exactly what that is. Probably give me a link to it. But just on my idiotic and completely non-existent knowledge, that sounds cool. 1, Mandalorian. 2, Ripper gun. All I can think, man, is if there's not at least one reference to the words rip and tear being said, I will probably be judging Fan a lot because he's missing a great chance to make a reference. It's just right there. Would that make sense in hindsight? Probably not. Would it be funny to me? Yes. Is that a good enough reason to believe he shouldn't do it because it would be funny to me and that's usually an indication that he shouldn't do it? Also, yes. More importantly, though, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up and let's get started. The Greater Maintenance Bays. That's where she was.
Janice, Gala,
Oh.
Farnes, and Sergeant Kalak Norn accompanied Nerva down into the Greater Maintenance Bay, leaving the willowy...
Oh, we're back with the troopers who are trying to rescue the tech priestess. Huh. Yeah. Technically, they're rescuing her. Technical is important.
soldier by the name of Regent behind to hide and, when the time came, operate the turbo lifts from above. They made good silent
nice.
speed on their rappel lines, using the tall struts of the lift itself to cover their approach, remaining unseen.
What is with everyone right now just deciding, hey, that's a really good idea. Let's jump down on rope. Okay, sure. Unless they're talking about turbolones as the aspect of the elevator that I thought they were on. I don't know.
Once on the ground, they had regrouped briefly, approach speed on their rappel lines, using the tall struts of the lift itself to cover their approach,
they're rappelling.
remaining unseen. Once on the ground, they had regrouped briefly, huddling while Gala kept watch, Laz rifle at the ready.
Alright, the plan is simple. Janice, you're sticking here. Hide and keep an eye on the lift controls. With any luck, we won't have to signal Regent to use the lift from above, and you can hop on with us as we leave. Farnes, you, me, and Gala are gonna escort our fair lady over here to her chariot. Once inside, we'll hang on tight to whatever we can,
said the sergeant. Nerva nodded her head.
I forgot about
Yes,
that.
and make sure that if you are holding on to the maintenance handholds, that you aren't touching any of the red or orange ones. If you
Why?
are, then you might get pinched in half when I begin moving the faithful flame.
Oh,
Look for a single
that's
solid
why.
piece away from the jointed areas. Once we are above...
Honestly, that is a very fascinating description in the sense that it's incredibly practical, and I'm actually really impressed by Fan even putting that little detail in there. Now, if this is something that exists in other forms of giant mechanization, such as tank treads or airplanes, entirely possible, and I'm just not aware of it. But if it is, that's a good bit of knowledge that he brought into something like this that would have a lot of moving parts, what I'm assuming is at night, because she was into that aspect, which is why I'm really excited. So just having various handholds marked as a place to not be safe to hold on to is a really smart move because it shows, hey, here's where you can grab on for dear life when they're running and you need to be brought somewhere fast, and here's where you become collateral. Take your pick. It's just a really smart way just to notify people of red equals dead, don't go red. Yeah, smart little just inclusion there. I like it.
ground, I can stop and make sure you are all in a safe place, she said. There will be a deployable ladder on the left side of my my knight. If you can get me there, I can trigger it and we can ascend from that.
I thought she was about to say mastiff, but the left-hand side of my mast, oh, she's actually going to try and find something specifically, isn't she? And it's her master's knight, not her knight. That's probably it.
My knight. If you can get me there, I can trigger it and we can ascend from that spot.
Alright, concerns?
Kalak asked, following that with a brief pause in which no one spoke.
Good, now let's get moving. Gala, you're with us, let's go.
The short-haired woman nodded without looking and slid down from her cover, quickly crawling her way to the more concealed area behind the stacked crates where they had been planning and joined them. The larger Janice remained as the 4 others began their approach, staying low and hugging the sides of the walls as they did. Kalak led the front, Farnes behind him, with Nerva staying in the young guardsman's shadow as Gala lagged slightly behind, covering their rear. They had managed to make it halfway across the room and were kneeling behind a row of large industrial energy filters when the shooting started.
It must be Janice,
Farnes whispered urgently. Sergeant Calac nodded, but did not
Murder
turn
Barbie.
back,
Yep.
instead waving them forward
This
to
is a
rush to
different
the
time we're
next set of
walking on, so I doubt
obstructions,
that.
a large, bound stack of refurbished coolant pipes. Before he could set off, however, Farnes reached forward and grabbed the sergeant's forearm. Sarge, did you hear? He started.
What?
You're throwing damn right I did, and there is a damn thing we can do about it. Now move up!
The sergeant hissed back. Farnes clenched his teeth.
Not a damn thing they can do about it. Now, that's actually surprising because it sounds like that's what they were there for, was to get her out. Oh, no. Pilot, yeah, their tech priest was there to get her master out. They're going for the knights, which is what everything's happening with. Okay, forgot that aspect.
But nodded and followed, feeling acid in his nose as a recognizable cry of pain echoed just under the dying blaster fire. And then, the shooting started up again, but this time farther away, and not in any direction any member of their squad had been positioned. It took the flustered trooper 8 or 9 seconds for the dots to connect.
Hey, Sarge!
He whispered at the next stop. Calac didn't respond, shuffling forward on his knees, barrel leading as he scanned to clear their next rush across the open space. They were huddled behind one of the odd Onager Walker tanks utilized by the Mechanicus, a closed set of red doors behind them, branded sealed with red wax.
I think they're shooting at the Magos.
They're trying to shoot at the Magos. Also, they literally sealed their doors with wax. I mean, it's not the dumbest thing I've heard in a planet where you're not sure of the conditions, but this is a planet where they're sure of the conditions, and it's honestly much less murdery than a lot of the 40K world. So that's just one of those overly religious mechanical details in the Mechanicus that it just kind of slaps you in the face every now and again. It's like, oh, no, yep, they're tech priests. Here's the priest part of it. We've had a lot of the tech priest, or the tech side of that, come up, but this is the first time the priest is right on display. It's actually a cool little detail to even show that. Just builds it up like, oh yeah, here's how they do the religious duties.
Farnes continued. The answer to his words came not from in front of him, but from behind.
Oh.
We know. She's going to buy us time by distracting them.
Or
said
killing
Nerva.
them all.
For how long can she do that?
Until they run out of
Farnes
people.
asked back. The Knight
Or they
Mechanicus
get a lucky
aspirant
hit.
shrugged, a look of barely concealed fear streaking across her mostly organic features.
She is a Magos Domina and is well known for her combat adaptations. That being said, there are thousands of replicae in this complex. She'll last longer than any of us, but ultimately
Yeah.
she cannot win.
You sure about that?
Enough chatter back there. The enemy.
Theoretically, with how she fights, if she can get them into a corridor and they don't think to destroy the corridor and collapse it on her, they could be held off for a significant amount of time if she's forced into numbers in close quarters where she does have an advantage. Or in very blind conditions where they can be outmaneuvered because she has a significant degree of motion. It would be very hard for a normal person, and she could definitely last longer, but frankly, her odds about winning are probably better than not.
He is moving on.
Unless there's
So
information I'm
get
not
ready
aware
to...
of, which is entirely
Sergeant
possible.
Calac started to say. He was cut off by the sound of a soft chime and snapped his head up as the power indicator above the door suddenly lit. Farnes followed his gaze with a jerk of his own and felt his stomach drop into his bladder, hissing in a panicked breath, even as the door hissed open.
Fulgrim's fragging fire! Ah!
Calac Norn
What?
bellowed as he twisted, armored back against the Onager tank as he and the rest of his squad
Accidentally
brought
ran
las
into them.
rifles around to bear, opening fire all the while. Just as the doors slid open, the red flashes of light which flew in were nearly instantly returned with a hail of blue bolts. They were mercifully inaccurate, the replicae having
Because they weren't
expected their
expecting to
targets
be
at
shot, they were
standing
expecting to be
level.
cut apart.
Still, not all was safe, which was demonstrated when the sergeant grunted and was kicked back against the metal of the vehicle behind him as he was shot in the very center of his chest.
Ooh.
His limbs jerked and twitched, but he didn't stop firing, even as his aim veered into uselessness.
Huh. I was going to make a joke about black armor for guardsmen actually helping. But then I was like, oh no, wait, Sergeant, let's just assume they have more than one wound. He's a specialty sergeant.
No, the only reason they were able to escape that sudden run of bad luck
They
was
weren't expecting
provided
to get
by
shot at?
Gala. Having been focused and ready, she had been the first
That's
to
a
react
lightsaber.
when the door showed any signs of life, having half expected it
What's
thanks
about
to
to
her
happen?
former life as a ganger in the Underhive. She had hefted her lasgun in one arm and opened fire on full automatic, but given how the white armor of the replique seemed capable of drinking in lasfire, at least to an extent, she made sure to keep her free hand far from idleness. Farnes grabbed Nerva, intending to drag her out of the line of fire, and thus turned just in time to see Gala rip free not one, but both of her remaining frag grenades with a single swipe of her hand. Then, without breaking the momentum of her swing, she used her index and middle fingers to catch the pins, taut and muscular digits yanking them free just before she tossed. The explosives tumbled in the air, colliding.
And she has already done the one thing I absolutely wish was an ability in 40K. Throw all the grenades! Yes, it's only 2 right now, but I don't care because, goddamn, just a single grenade. It's like, okay, here's a wasted action. Throwing all the grenades, here's fun. Well, I'm getting jealous for an addition. I'm not even sure if they have that or not in the current one. Just it hasn't been in the previous that I actually played. I'm just sitting here going like, this is so cool to see. I'm geeking out over mechanics in a game that aren't even relevant to this. I have gone full nerd.
Hiding with the walls of the passageway behind the previously sealed doors with signature clinks. The younger guardsman marveled at the maneuver, but was hardly surprised.
Yep.
Farnes had noticed that Underhive gangers tended to just be amazing like that. He figured they had to be, or they would have ended up dead long before reaching recruitment age. The replique masked behind the doors knew well enough what those echoing sounds were, and reeled back before the twin explosions consumed too many of them. As the tunnel belched smoke and sound, Gala rushed forward, grabbing the sergeant and hauling him up, helping him move to proper cover as she chased after Farnes and Nerva. They found some clever shelter and moved in, Gala moving to lay him down against a stack of massive munition crates. "Sergeant," she whispered softly.
I'm fragging fine.
Dude, they got the blackened hole and everything. Seriously, the art they're pulling together is getting better every single time.
Just get this fucking flak off of my chest.
He struggled to say.
Gala
Gala nodded and began to work it off of him, getting help from Farnes a second or two later. The chest piece was shattered, and Calic was burned beneath. But the wound did not seem terribly bad, and certainly not lethal. But the sergeant's arms and legs were quaking now, trembling unnaturally, and his eyes were filling with red. Sarge, what's happening to you? Farnes asked,
no, probably
heart racing as he watched the man's condition continue to deteriorate.
I ionized my pump.
Calic managed to hiss through his tightly clenched.
It can do that? Oh. That. Now, here I'm wondering, did it ionize a pump in his chest, a pump external to his chest, or did just having it hit him ionize whatever was in his body altogether? So he's going to die horribly because it sounds like a heart valve pump is gone, or even a replacement heart for all I know. Because they had the mask here, I assume that was it, but no. So the cybernetics are affected as ionization will destroy them. Does he mean they were physically destroyed by it, or the impulse itself? That's really a dividing line here. If it was destroyed by being shot, okay, that sucks, but understandable. If it's destroyed by just the ambient energy from the blast, even if it wasn't lethal in its own right, radiating through the body and destroying the actual cyborg bits, that could be horrible because there are so many incredibly upper ranked people who are competent, who are able to keep fighting and keep being good at their job in the 40K side because of cybernetics, keeping them competent. But if a single shot does more than destroy, but can actually just take out the cybernetics, that could render a lot of people really fucked up if they get a lucky shot. To put in gameplay terms, it renders a 1-wound model with a save into a no-wound model with no save, or a multi-wound model also into a no save. It's like when 1 damage kills a 4-wound model. It's like, why? It's stupid. There are actually mechanics to do that in 40K, but previous edition, as far as I know. But that's actually incredibly useful if it works that way. If it just happened to get a lucky shot, that just sucks. One could be powerful, the other is game-changing.
Teeth. Nerva nodded right away and went to his left side, cutting away his uniform. Sure enough, Built into his waist was a mechanical panel, a blood pressure regulator.
It was his waist.
It was made mostly smooth to avoid
means it
snagging on
wasn't
clothing,
a hit.
melded almost seamlessly at the
It was
level of his
ambient.
skin. But the sergeant had been right. It was sparking and, more concerningly, bleeding profusely from around the rim of its form. Gala's face
was
tightened,
overloaded.
and she spun
Those
around,
ion
not
shots are
looking at the
designed to go
sergeant and
against
instead
that.
looking back the way they had come, spotting the line of clones issuing out from the
He's
now
dead.
open
There's no way
doorway.
around that.
We've got toys incoming. Let's get you on your feet, Sarge.
Said the underhiver.
Give me a moment.
No.
I can probably...
Nerva started, but Norn pulled away.
No time!
He gasped, using considerable will to lift his lasgun and hold it steady.
Gala, you and the kid get the priest to her god or whatever.
He said, panting heavily.
I'll buy time.
Gala hesitated, looking
Yeah.
back, eyes wide. But she nodded her head stiffly.
Aye, Sergeant. It's been the honor of my life.
She said, voice hard, harder than it normally was.
Same.
Okay,
Now get
Gala's
on,
a
move
badass.
on.
Kalak Norn grunted as he shoved himself onto the lip
Goddamn
of the
Norn.
containers and braced his weapon against it. The replicae were speeding off towards the major disturbance.
Okay, two things to say. One, god damn, that music choice is hitting hard right now. I mean, holy shit. If anyone knows where that's from, people have actually been able to tell me a lot of the songs in here and a bunch of other videos too, and I appreciate that. But if they could do that right now, this is mood music, and it is hitting hard. I have plenty of better ways to describe it, but I don't want to because it would take longer. And the other part is, we've now seen a reversal of an earlier aspect where someone did exactly this. Before, it was actually with 1313, and we saw that. So we're seeing how a Krieger is like, I'm going to go down fighting. And he then just, has the brother doing it. It wasn't 1313, it was his brother, I think 1314. Batch copy. What do they even call that? It's clones, I don't know. But they did that aspect, and we saw that brilliant, leave me behind, I'm going to do it. And now we have him doing it as well, because there got really not much other choice with this. So it's kind of cool to see that it's not just a Krieg thing, it's a you got no other choice and you're going to do your job thing, which is really good for the competence. And really bad for pointing out that technically these are actually, never mind, it completely emphasizes the Star Wars side is the bad guys. Yeah. That still amuses me. It really does. Especially since the 40K side is going full war crime right now, and they're technically, I think, by default, the good guys. Not because they're the best, but due to the same logic as 40K. Everyone else is somehow managing to be worse. Oh, God.
Or at least most of them were. However, not all, and several had decided to cover themselves and make sure their immediate area was clear. Those groups were
Did they?
only seconds from spotting them now. Sarge, Farnes began, tears wetting his eyes.
Save him, kid.
The sergeant said, releasing his first volley of fire as they were spotted.
Get that lady to the walker.
He grunted as Gala fired over his shoulder.
Don't cry. Just get out. Make it. Move it now.
He roared. At this, Gala tore herself away and grabbed Farnes, nearly pulling him along as he, and Nerva began to run. Kalak remained, slumped against the crates, firing on fully automatic and watching the barrel of his lasgun begin to glow and then melt. But he had to keep the replicate back, had to keep their heads
Distract them.
down, had to buy enough time for... A bolt took him in the shoulder, the force of
Yep.
it sending him back and sprawling onto the ground. His mostly ruined lasgun went skittering from his grasp. The sergeant groaned and flipped onto his belly, mind reeling, shoulder numb, and then burning, truly burning. But he shoved it aside, ignoring his useless arm
have
and
another
pulling
gun?
himself forward
Handgun.
almost a meter, reaching out and grasping his gun once more.
That is actually impressive, considering if his blood is completely fucked right now, like, taking out the pump is basically saying, you dead. The fact that he has that much control is impressive and does really hammer home. Cadia stands even when it's sitting down. Fuck, man.
With one arm,
Yeah,
he
I realized
reloaded
that
it,
pun was bad
even
and I
though
feel
it did
bad
not
about it.
need to be reloaded, and even though he did not intend to fire it again. Fumbling with his single working
something we
hand,
can do
he
to
managed to
distract
perform
them.
an old trick he had learned decades ago when
What?
fighting blueskins outside the sector. By abusing the power settings on the loaded battery and gun, and failing to perform the proper corrections, he began a subtle chain reaction within the weapon. Kalak had just finished when a hard, white boot kicked him on.
I have questions. One, how did he learn that and survive? And two, holy shit. I hope he told someone else this entire thing, because that is a lot of bullets they're about to overcook on that thing. And they're not actually bullets, they're energy packs. So all of it released at once, even if it's a horrible, wasteful exertion, that is probably going to be significant damage. Oh my.
Onto his back. He cried out in pain, his mind blanking in white-hot agony for a second or two, the replique above him having struck him in his bad arm.
Ooh.
While he was stunned, they kicked away his lasgun and sighted him down. One of them pressed a button on the side of his helmet and began to speak in mangled but understandable Gothic.
Oh, they already have a translation? Neat. Also, the best part about them removing his gun is they're probably kicking it away where it's safe, which is behind them. Probably where the reinforcements arrive. Oh, if they do that or not, I don't know. Depending on how big the explosion is, it might not matter, but I'm looking forward to
You,
this.
Commander, you surrender. Kalak laughed ruefully at the false man.
Not
and
enough left for
spat
that.
Weakly.
It's a damn right.
He croaked. It wasn't just the blaster wound. He had already been dying before he was shot down, and even now he saw darkness eating away at his vision.
Hell,
and
he might die
devouring
before the
capacity
explosion.
of his thoughts. Everything was growing subtle and more distant with every second.
I am the fucking Emperor himself.
He managed weakly. The clone did
good
not
thing he's dying,
seem to
because they would
take
kill
that
him for that
seriously
blasphemy.
and turned to the left somewhat, now clearly radioing someone else.
I know this is weird, and I know the shoe is just pointing away from the camera, but because of the angle, it really does look like he has a hand on his arm, even though I know that's a plate there. But it just, for a second there, you gotta stop and think, oh, no, wait, no, he doesn't have 3 hands. We're good. It isn't some kind of weird mutation monstrosity like a Sith beast. That would be actually par for course, but still, oof.
As he spoke, helpless soldier here. We take prisoners? The replique asked into his helmet. Kalak grinned a red smile at that and spoke his last words, his breath escaping past
Fuck you.
ruddy,
What is it?
bloody lips only a microsecond before his overcharged
has
lasgun
lips
went
still?
critical and detonated like an Astartes patterned frag grenade.
I don't.
Take prisoners. Dude. Hard to believe it only went off with an Astartes pattern frag grenade. On the other hand, I guess that means it's a heavy frag grenade. I don't know what that would be in terms of what it would actually do, but, you know, gets it up to Astartes level, so that's pretty strong. Even though in the game they're still fucking weak. I hate having to use them because they're annoying as hell. Crack grenades, sure. Usually if you have one in your range, you have better options. And now we're at within one of the metro fronts of the Azure City. Wait, one of? So is this back to the other people, like the civilians who are going to fight? Or are we seeing a new front altogether? I mean, the civilians are already a new front.
Combier and Herod were not marching
Nope,
blind.
civilians.
They knew exactly where they were going. The Imperials still seemed to be wrapping their heads around the free information systems that Axum had borne for thousands of years. And while
Because they're not
access to
used
the
to having
holonet and other
information access.
obvious information relays had been shut down or prohibited, for every channel the imps cut, 8 more remained in more subtle fashion. It had been through these hidden communication systems that the Axumites had begun to organize themselves, once the call to them had gone out.
Now, this is actually something really impressive because it shows 2 things. One, the Imperium's adapting to the technology of Star Wars really fast to the point where they could cut the access. But it's such a different usage of technology and from a strictly human basis that they're probably having to deal with the entire idea of, okay, why is there so much? Because 40K information control is a thing, and you don't give people information if you can avoid it, because it does actually potentially lead to chaos, which is not entirely the reason they do it, but it's definitely the biggest reason no one who knows better says anything about it. So they're dealing with that. And while the tech priest could probably just shut everything down, they probably don't know what to shut down until they see it. So the big ones are probably gone. But like they said here, the smaller channels, they're still making it through. It's literally whack-a-mole with the entire system they don't understand. So they're just dealing with it. Because it's probably more complex than the noosphere in the sense that there's more graphical interfaces, so there's less direct control. So you'd probably have aspects that are not immediately visible. And while they probably can find it, they have to know to look. Sorry, I just like these kind of things showing where there's an incredibly advanced society dealing with this, because it does seem like diving into the more digital side is something the 40K side has the advantage on, while at the same time showing that because this is so different, they have the advantage of still being able to use it to communicate, even if it's only less than before. It's a small thing to geek out on, but I do like these little bits. Something Fan does a great job at really hammering home. Just how the technological interactions work, how there's differences between things, how he's showing little bits and pieces of character and lore and world building, just on how he describes a handful of side aspects without going into too much detail. It's actually really impressive.
Across every possible channel and method of distance communication, the Jedi Master Ram Koda had called for aid. A call that all knew the Imperium would certainly hear as well.
Yep.
This, combined with the proud military histories of so many on the planet, led to a more coordinated approach to their uprising.
Oh?
Traveling down, they made their way to a hidden meeting place, a bolo
So they'd
field
also
hidden
not be
within
aware
the metal
that it is
folds
a
of the
rebellion yet.
Azurine Metrofront complex. Bolo Ball was big in the mid and outer rims, but was barely played in the core worlds, yet required a fair amount of space to play.
Oh.
As such, the area they used was both relatively hidden and out of the way, while also being vast enough to hold many of them. Combeer idly wondered how many other abandoned Bolo Ball complexes had found a second life in this way, as he and his father entered the area, pushing into the crowd of armed and angered Axumites as they did. From the looks of things here, he suspected there would be many teeming with activity if this one was any indication of the general trend.
Oh.
Already, someone was speaking, their voice echoing from the loudspeakers and walls of the large chamber. The two newcomers paused to listen. Those with adequate weapons and equipment, stay to the north of the arena.
Huh. Really good on Fan for being able to pull out this new voice. Just his voice acting talent is incredibly good, specifically compared to even just the first couple episodes. I can't do that many variations of voices and hold them constant. And he's doing a very good nasally voice right now, because every time I do it, I just fall into a radio announcer voice. And while I actually personally enjoy it, I know it sounds horrible, but he's pulling it off really well.
North. Everyone without full gear, come down to the southern half for what you are missing. Quickly now, quickly. We leave in 10 minutes.
Oh,
for
that is
Axum,
quick.
for the Jedi, and for the Republic. A scattered cheer went up from the crowd, and
Sorry, just every time I hear someone go, for the Republic, for the Jedi, I just keep remembering in the back of my head, and it has happened in multiple episodes. Yeah, it's not going to be around much longer. No. It's very different.
Combeer was led by his father in the proper direction, clinging tightly to his pack and his rare, heavy rifle. The spotlights above the field illuminated the patchwork crowd brightly. Axumites from all strata of the worldwide city were here, in all manner of attire, armor, and uniforms. Most surprising, at least to Combeer, was the amount of aliens present as well. He was glad
survived
for
this
the
long?
company and the help, but he had
guess they
assumed
did.
most of them had been rounded up by the Imperium already. Seeing them here brought a smile to his thin lips. The imp's control wasn't even half as ironclad as they like to pretend it was.
And isn't that the best way to describe every freaking hive world? I mean, when one of the big reveals about the previous, edition of 40K was, hey, there was a Gene Stealer contingent on Terra. It's not big, maybe, but it's there, definitely, because at the end of one of the novel where there was a rebellion taking place, the big reveal at the very end was the Custodes finding murals to the Star Child, which was directly connected to Tyranids, so that would only be there if, you had Gene Stealers somehow who had got on Terra. So the entire idea, they don't have that great control, is a very legitimate fact.
His father ambled out to meet with some of the more experienced warriors, and Combeer left him to it. The youth was content to let his father coordinate with the others, resisting the urge to draw and sight his Ripper rifle as he found the nearby lip of the field and leaned against it to wait. He was joined a few minutes later by another man, a tall man, thickly built and dressed in a black trench coat which covered work fatigues.
Oh.
He was a member of the lower strata, from the looks of his attire, but his movements were solid, almost mechanical, yet smooth. The man had a small carton in one hand, from which he produced 2 white-rolled sticks of something musky and fragrant. One hand deposited the carton into his pocket, fishing around for something else, while the other was raised to his lips, teeth taking the butt of one of the items. Before long, he raised his other hand, an antique lighter clenched between his fingers. Combeer did not know why, but...
Huh. This is weird, because while I know they have drugs that are similar to that in 40K Star Wars, I don't think I've ever seen someone just smoke. Which is weird, considering during the 70s when this came out, that was still considered a healthy thing. Yeah. Or was it the 80s? Okay, maybe if it was the 80s, that'd make a little more sense, but I think it was the 80s, yeah. No, it had to be the 70s. You know what? I actually rightly don't know if it was the 70s or 80s the first Star Wars movie came out in. I should probably look that up. I'm not going to because I'm lazy, but I should.
Each movement the man made felt so certain that he doubted Durasteel chains could have prevented him from raising his limb and lighting the smokable stick.
I have a
held
feeling
between
this is
his
a guy
lips.
from the
He turned then and
Imperium
offered the youth
Infiltrating.
one as well. Combeer looked at it for a moment, thinking he'd reject, until he remembered where he was and what he was about to do. He grinned and reached for it. "Thanks," he said, placing the smelly, wrapped weed between his lips, though he had no lighter. The man said nothing, pulling a long drag out of his cigarette and blowing the smoke out into the
straight up
air.
cigarette.
He
Not
looked
a
over
stick.
at the younger man beside him and sighed, offering him the lighter as well. "This isn't a death stick, is it?" Combeer asked. "No," the man said, but did not elaborate. Combeer waited, but then shrugged and snapped open the lighter, lighting the end of his and pulling on it. He pulled too hard, and moments later, Combeer was bent over, hands on his knees and coughing.
They're really just hammering home how young this guy is. Even more than the previous one where it's like arguing with the mother while going with the father. You know they're going to get red-shirted. At least one of them, probably the dad and the mom, and probably him in a really horrific way that really hammers home the plot is my assumption. But they are just like this right now. It's like oh yeah, well, we're about to do things, so I might as well do something stupid that I wouldn't normally do. What is this? I'm going to put it in my mouth. It's like every 80s trope for that kid who's a rebel, but doesn't know how to rebel quite yet. They don't have a cause, but like this is their early phase. Yeah. He is that. And it's getting into a T to the point where you don't have to tell me this guy's probably about 12 to 13 years old for me to believe he's 12 to 13 years old. And if you told me he was older, I would be very surprised, actually.
The older man chuckled, despite the narcotic wasting on the floor, and gave the young Axumite a few hard pats on his back.
Easy. You'll knock yourself off your feet if you take drags like that right off the bat. Start with puffs. Work your way up,
he said. Combeer nodded, still coughing for a moment longer until he managed to get control again. He sheepishly
looks like such a little
retrieved the
kid.
dropped tube then, and placed it back between his lips, though he did not pull again. "Combeer," said the younger man.
Samael,
The older man said back. The man's face was dirty, though the white of old scars seemed to peer past the sheen of soot, just enough to make it clear he had been in some kind of accident. From the way he moved, the young man wouldn't be surprised if he had already seen real combat as a mercenary or proper soldier. He wavered slightly then, feeling a heady rush enter his mind for a moment, making his heart race and then settle. "So, are you here because of the Jedi?" Combeer asked, blushing slightly
that.
even before the man answered.
isn't everyone? Doubt anyone would be here right now otherwise.
I don't know why, but for some reason, this guy doesn't give me, I want to listen to the Jedi vibes. Although he's talking about everyone, he's not actually saying he is.
He said with a shrug and a sigh. Samuel took another long pull. columns of smoke ejecting from his nostrils a moment or two later before continuing.
But no, I'd be here whether the Jedi called or not.
Called it.
I've not been waiting for some light stick twirling outsider. I've been waiting for this, and only this.
He said, taking what was left of his narcotic tube and gesturing around at the filled field and bleachers before promptly returning it to his mouth. So you've just been waiting for the rest of us, huh?
Yeah, seems like
Combier
it.
asked. The man nodded.
Doesn't take a genius to figure out this would happen eventually.
Yeah.
I just wish it had happened sooner. But I guess a lot of the planet is used to relying on the Jedi for problems like this.
And isn't that the truth? Because that is a huge problem in Star Wars in general. The Republic was incredibly complacent and let the Jedi basically do everything. And there was not a lot of Jedi, which also led to the problem with a lot of corruption and crime and, slavery being a thing in the Republic that was just there. It's like, yeah, hey, all those planets that are, literally breaking the law, but we can't prove because there's literally no one there to see it, and they're in charge of their own population, so they just don't tell anyone because why not? Yeah. The more you learn about Star Wars, the more you realize it does repeat its mistakes a lot. But he's very much right about relying on the Jedi. Also, relying on the Jedi is not going to help much because they're probably all dead soon.
So maybe I can't blame him. By the way, kid, I can't help but notice that rifle you're hauling around. What the hell is that thing?
Combier instinctively pulled the slung weapon closer, and Samael raised a placating hand.
Easy, I don't use rifles. Just honest curiosity's all. It's
Pistols?
clearly not a blaster,
Laser
so it
guns?
sticks out in this mob.
Or
He said.
up close and personal.
Combier paused for a moment longer, considering the man a bit more before choosing how to answer. Tall and black-haired, with dark eyes that gleamed oddly like obsidian flakes. But what struck the younger man more profoundly was just how large Samael was. Easily 6 feet, with a body wrought in pure muscle.
Damn.
Muscle which flexed and bent perceptibly beneath the taut confines of his clothes. In spite of that, the man seemed unarmed himself, though his trench coat was more than capable of hiding more than one weapon, so
he actually gonna
Combier
melee fight?
disregarded the observation. All in all,
Damn.
he was not sure if he trusted the man, but he was more than happy to have him on their side. It's a heavy Mandalorian Ripper rifle, he said proudly. Samael's head tilted.
Doesn't look like any Ripper guns I know about.
Oh,
He
he knows
muttered.
about them.
Yeah, it's super rare. We don't really know how to make them. Only the Mandalorians might, and if they do still know, they are hiding the fact really well, Combier said.
And on top of that, during this time, Sabine would have been in charge, so she's actively suppressing anything about military because admittedly good personal biases against it due to watching family die in front of her and just being mentally screwed in the head. Yeah. And then the show kind of... I know enough just to know that she got a shaft on the writing side. Yeah.
I see. That's great and all, but what does it actually do?
Kill
The man
things,
asked,
hopefully.
pulling one last time on his rolled narcotic. He breathed out a scattering
click,
breath
dead.
of smoke and
If it goes
spat
right.
the spent bud from his lips before promptly retrieving another. Well, I guess you'll just have to wait and find out.
Along
Stick
with you,
around
because
and I'll
you
be
probably
sure to
don't know
show
either.
you a practical demonstration, the younger man boasted. Samael snorted but did
God,
not
he's a
press the
kid.
issue further, lighting his newest stick. The two waited there for a brief time before, finally, Herod began to make his way towards them, a
Oh,
group
Herod
at his
know this
back,
guy.
and a goal in his eyes.
Oh?
But when Combier turned to his latest acquaintance, the big man was gone. The
Oh.
only evidence he had been there being the smell of smoke, the butt of his spent stick, the half-burnt, bent stick between his own lips, and the weight of the man's forgotten lighter in his own pocket.
Let's go, son. We've got a target in mind.
That's
Herod
odd.
said excitedly, pausing when he noticed Combier looking around urgently. Lose something? His
Yeah, the guy
father
next to
asked.
him.
Combier paused at Herod's question, tugging his pack and rifle, finding them both intact and in place still. He shrugged then. No, just looking for... Never mind. We'll probably meet up later anyway.
That's going to be interesting. There's something going on there. So I don't know what Samael's deal is, but you don't Batman someone like he did to Combier and just disappear out of nowhere without any trace, but leaving behind just enough information to show that it was in his head because the lighter is still there. That is a great way to just build up a character as mysterious. It shows two things, though. Not just that, but also that he's engaging with someone who's admittedly much younger and more inexperienced. Especially just like the puffing and not being able to do the cigarette because he has no idea what's going on. It's like, I'm trying to build myself up. And he brags about the gun that he knows nothing about, including how it works because he says, oh, I'll give you a demonstration, showing he has no idea himself. There's so much bravado of youth here that the kid looks like a tiny little, well, kid. But that works because it also builds up Combier by showing him as the aged veteran who's not actually so gruff that they will talk down to the kid. They'll give him the chance. They'll give him the, hey, you're probably going to die. Have a cigarette. It'll relax you before you get perforated. I'm not sure if I mean perforated or pulled apart-orated. Could go with both this one, depending on how things go. But it does build up one. By showing the youth of the other, we have the experience of Samuel. And I really want to see how that works out because there's something going on with him. Because if he just appeared and said goodbye to Herod, I was like, okay, interesting character, but probably not important. Highlighting the mysterious aspect of him pulling the Batman, though, that is fascinating because it pulls attention to him in a way that it wouldn't have if it was a normal exit. When something unexpected happens, your mind is going full, neurons activated. What happened? It's the little mystery. And even if it's just a tiny one, it already tells you as a massive flashing sign, this is important. Pay attention to this character. Do I know what he's going to do? No. Do I know if he's going to be a long-term character or a short-term with massive importance? I don't know. I highly doubt that he's going to be a one-done character and we'll just be like, okay, well, he's gone. That happened. Because I don't think Fan's an incompetent writer. And just throwing in random characters for absolutely no meaning doesn't really seem to be his style. So I don't know what's about to happen with him, but I'm very excited. Also, I might be cutting this one early because they are mowing outside and it's like I can feel it shaking. And I'm not sure if you guys can hear it on the mic or not. If it does, sorry in advance. I don't actually know how to fit that one out after the fact. Or that they would mow right now. I thought they were doing that earlier. But details. More importantly, if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.